Storytelling and the oral tradition is the very foundation that Indo-European pagan spirituality and culture stands on. It's the way our ancestors educated, taught and passed on skill and identity. It's how we build and understand our world. So for that very reason, Harmenia creates and provides what we call ritual stories. Stories intended to teach authentic Indo-European rituals and spiritual practice, while also inspiring and entertaining with new original stories. You'll find them all on the Harmenia platform. This one is part 1 of the ritual story about the celebration of the summer solstice, about when the life force is at its strongest. It shows purification, fire rituals, the horse sacrifice and the ritual of the sacred drink, all taking place out on the vast steppes of our oldest Indo-European ancestors. Enjoy! The light came early on the open grasslands of the steppe, but on this day it felt different, as if the sky itself was already awake before the people. A pale silver glow lay low along the horizon, not yet the sun, but its promise. The air was cool, holding the last breath of night, and every blade of grass bent under the weight of dew. The camp was quiet, though not really asleep. Low wagons stood in a loose circle, their wooden frames creaking softly as the wind moved across the plain. Beyond them, the herds shifted and murmured, cattle exhaling slow clouds into the chill, horses stamping and tossing their heads, sensing something in the air that even they could not name. A tethered foal let out a soft whinny, answered by its dam. Life was already stirring. This was no ordinary morning. It was the day when the sun would stand longest in the sky, when its fire would reach its highest strength before beginning its slow return. The elders said that on this day the boundaries thinned, between night and day, between water and flame, between maiden and mother, between youth and whatever came after. Even the children felt it, though they didn't understand. Ausōsā was already awake. She lay still for a moment beneath the wool covering, listening to the wind brushing the grass, to the distant lowing of cattle, to the faint movement of others rising quietly. Her name had always felt heavier on this day. Daughter of the Dawn, the older women sometimes called her, half in jest, half in something else. On this morning it felt less like a name and more like a summons. She sat up. Across from her, Veena was already braiding her hair, fingers moving quickly in the dim light. There was a faint smile on her lips, the kind she never quite explained. Beside her, Danuvi was tying a thin cord around her wrist, murmuring something too soft to hear. Perhaps a charm, perhaps only a habit learned from her mother. Heria crouched near the entrance, peering out toward the paling horizon, restless as a young mare. "You slept?" Veena asked without looking up. "A little," Ausōsā answered. Heria snorted softly. "Who slept on this night?" Danuvi glanced toward them, her eyes reflecting the dim light. "You weren't meant to," she said. "Not all the way. You might miss it." "Miss what?" Veena teased. But no one answered. They all knew. Outside, the world was waiting. The grass stretched in every direction, a living sea, each blade tipped with silver. The dew was thick this morning, thicker than any other day. The elders said it was because the sky leaned closer to the earth at the height of the sun's power, and in that closeness something passed between them. Something that settled in the water, in the plants, in the bodies of those who knew how to take it. Today the dew was not just water. It was strength, it was beauty, it was fertility, it was promise. And it had to be gathered before the sun rose fully, before its heat lifted the gift back into the sky. The girls stepped out together. The cold bit immediately at their bare feet, but none of them flinched. This too was part of it, to feel the earth, to take the chill into the body. It sharpened and awakened. Their garments were simple, loose, easily lifted above the knees. And their hair was unbound or loosely tied, as tradition demanded. Nothing was to hinder the touch of the dew. In the distance, a figure moved among the horses. Equon. He was checking the tethers, though there was no real need. The animals were calm. They always were at this hour. But like the others, he couldn't sleep, and so he moved with quiet purpose, hands brushing the neck of a mare, fingers lingering in her mane. He paused, sensing something, and turned. And for a moment he saw them, 4 figures emerging into the silver field, and among them Ausōsā. There was no greeting, not yet. That too belonged to later. But something passed between them, as real as the cold air, as certain as the coming sun. "Come," Danuvi said softly. They moved out into the grass. At first slowly, then with growing certainty. They began the work they had watched since childhood, but only now fully took part in. Their hands brushed along the tops of the grasses, gathering the dew onto their skin. They lifted it to their faces, their throats, their arms. Vena laughed quietly as the cold made her shiver, but she didn't stop. Heria moved further out, stretching her arms wide, letting the wetness soak into her skin. "It was stronger today," she said. "Could you feel it?" "Yes," Ausōsā said. And she could. It was more than cold, more than water. There was a strange brightness in it, a tingling that lingered where it touched. She pressed her damp hands to her cheeks, her neck, her chest, as she had been taught. Around her, the others did the same, their movements half ritual, half instinct. Danuvi knelt, gathering dew into a small wooden bowl, careful, deliberate. "For later," she murmured, "for the fire." The fire, that would come that night. The horizon burned now with the first true gold. The sun was coming. The dew wouldn't last much longer. Wena turned suddenly, eyes bright. "Quickly," she said, "before it lifted." They moved faster now, laughter breaking through the quiet, feet slipping through wet grass, hands glistening. The world felt close, alive, watching. Ausōsā straightened, her breath catching slightly as she looked toward the rising light. For a moment, everything seemed suspended. The girls in the field, the herds beyond, the lone figure among the horses, and the sun just at the edge of the world. This was the turning. This was the day when things began. And before it ended, she knew, though she couldn't yet say how, that something in her life would have changed forever. As they moved through the wet grass, their hands didn't gather only the dew. Here and there, rising among the long blades, the summer plants stood in their fullness, open, fragrant, heavy with the strength of the season. The elders had taught them to look for these places, where the land thickened slightly, where colour broke the endless green. On this day, above all others, the plants held the sun within themselves, even before it had fully risen. Kóryos was the first to kneel. "There," she said softly, parting the grass. Small white blossoms spread low to the ground, their scent sharp and clean. She plucked them carefully, not tearing, but lifting, as she had been shown. "For the wounds," she said, almost to herself, "and for the blood." Danuvi nodded. "And for the fire," she added, "dried, burned with the offerings." Nearby, Wena reached for a taller stem crowned with pale yellow flowers, their faces just beginning to open to the light. When she crushed one gently between her fingers, the scent rose warm and bitter. She smiled faintly. "This one keeps sickness away," she said. "My mother hangs it in the wagon." "And under the bedding," Kóryos added with a grin. Wena didn't answer, but the smile lingered. Ausōsā moved more slowly, her eyes searching. She had always liked this part best. Not the taking, but the finding, the quiet recognition, as if the plant revealed itself only when it chose to be seen. Near a slight hollow where the dew lay thickest, she found them. Blue, delicate, almost hidden, small star-shaped flowers trembling on thin stems. She crouched, touching them lightly, and then began to gather them one by one. "For beauty," Wena said behind her, watching. Ausōsā glanced back. "So you say." "So the elders say," Wena corrected, though her tone held its usual teasing warmth. "Woven into the hair before the fire is lit, or steeped if someone wishes to be more strongly seen." Kóryos laughed softly at that. Ausōsā said nothing, but she didn't stop gathering. Further out, Danuvi had found a patch of feathery leaves and flat clusters of pale flowers. She cut them carefully with a small blade, laying them together in her bowl beside the dew. "These are for healing," she said, "for fevers, for childbirth." Her voice lowered slightly at the last word. "And for the animals when they weaken." Kóryos would want those, Ausōsā thought absently, and then caught herself surprised at where her mind had gone. They moved apart and together in a slow rhythm, each drawn to different plants, each remembering different lessons. Some they gathered for medicine, to dry and store, to ease pain, to bring down heat, to close wounds. Some for protection, to hang in the wagons, to scatter at thresholds, to burn so that the smoke would drive away what should not linger. Some for the fire, to be cast into the flames at sunset, carrying scent and offering upward, joining earth to sky. And some, though no one said it plainly, for themselves, for beauty, for desire, for the quiet half-spoken hopes that belonged especially to this day, when the world was full and the future seemed close enough to touch. "The sun will take it soon," Danuvi said after a while, glancing toward the brightening horizon. Already the light was changing. The silver of the dew was thinning, turning to gold. Wena gathered the last of her stems, binding them loosely with a strip of fibre. "Then we take what we can," she said. Kóryos straightened, her arms full, her hair damp but clinging to her neck. "It feels different today," she said again, quieter now. "Stronger." "It is," Danuvi replied. Ausōsā rose, the small blue flowers in her hands, their colour vivid even in the growing light. Around them, the steppe seemed to breathe, the grasses, the herbs, the unseen roots deep in the earth, all holding the fullness of the sun's turning. For a little while longer, that power remained within reach, and they gathered it as they had been taught before it slipped away. They didn't return to the wagons immediately. The dew was fading now, and their arms were full of gathered stems, of dampness, of the quiet exhilaration that came with doing something both familiar and newly their own. But the morning wasn't yet complete. One part still remained, and it couldn't be done among the others. "Come," Danubi said, adjusting the bowl she carried, "before the sun rises too high." They turned eastward, away from the encampment, toward a shallow dip in the land where the grass grew thicker and darker. There, hidden until one stood almost upon it, a narrow stream wound its way across the steppe, a slow tributary that fed, far beyond sight, into the great river the elders spoke of with a kind of reverence. Even here its presence could be felt. The air was cooler along its banks, the ground softer, the scent of water and growing things rose up, mingling with the crushed herbs still clinging to their hands. "This is where my mother brought me," Wena said quietly as they approached. "The first time." Heria glanced at her. "And did you do it properly?" Wena gave a small shrug. "Well, I tried." Danubi smiled faintly. "Today you will." They set their gathered plants carefully on a dry patch of ground, weighing them with small stones so the breeze wouldn't scatter them. The stream moved slowly beside them, its surface catching the first true light of the sun in long wavering lines. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, without ceremony, Heria pulled her garment loose and let it fall. The others followed. There was no shame in it. There never had been among them. But today there was something more. A heightened awareness. A quiet attentiveness. The air touched their skin differently. The coolness lingered. Dew still clung to their legs, their arms, catching the light as they moved. Wena laughed softly as she stepped onto the damp bank. "Colder than I remember." "It's meant to be," Danubi said. "It wakes the body." "And more than that," Heria added, wading in without hesitation, her breath catching at the first touch of water. "It takes what shouldn't be carried into the day." One by one they entered. The stream was shallow, but the chill ran deep, rising along their legs, their hips, their bodies, until it drew a sharp breath from each of them. They didn't rush through it. This too had been taught. Not simply to wash, but to stand, to let the water move around them, to feel it. Ausōsā stepped in last. The cold closed around her, clear and sudden. For a moment everything else fell away, the camp, the voices, even the rising sun. There was only the sensation of water against skin, of breath held and then released. She dipped her hands, lifting the stream to her face, her neck, her chest, as she had done with the dew. Around her the others did the same, their movements slow and deliberate. Danubi murmured softly, words half heard, perhaps as a charm, perhaps as something older passed from woman to woman without needing to be fully spoken. "Let it take what is old," she said. "Let it leave what is strong." Wena moved closer, brushing water along Heria's shoulders, pushing wet strands of hair back from her face. Heria laughed again, softer now, but didn't move away. Their hands lingered a moment longer than needed. Not unfamiliar, but not unnoticed either. Ausōsā felt it too, that subtle shift in the air between them. Not only play, not only habit, something warmer beneath it, something that belonged to this day as surely as the fire would belong to the night. A loosening, a readiness. Then Kóryos stilled, her gaze turning downstream. "Look," she said. They followed her eyes. Further along the curve of the tributary, half hidden by reeds and the low rise of the bank, movement caught the light. Figures in the water, broader, darker against the shimmer. Voices carried faintly, low and indistinct. The young men. For a moment, no one spoke. It wasn't unexpected. The elders had said as much, that the purification belonged to all, that the water didn't divide between them. And yet, seeing them there, so near, separated only by a bend in the stream, made something shift again, sharper this time. Wēna's smile returned, slower now. "So they wake early too?" Kóryos tilted her head, watching. Or they didn't sleep either. Danubi said nothing, but her eyes remained fixed on the water's curve. Ausōsā felt her breath change. She couldn't see clearly who stood among them, not at this distance, not through the shimmer of light and movement, but she knew, or thought she did. Ekwon, the name came to her as naturally as her own breath. For a moment, the cool of the water seemed to deepen, the current pressing more firmly against her skin. The world felt very close. Water, light, voices just beyond sight. This was part of it too. Not spoken plainly, not taught in the same way as the gathering of herbs or the tending of fire, but understood nonetheless. The day when the body was awakened, when the boundary between what was permitted and what was possible grew thin. "We should finish," Danubi said at last, though her voice was softer than before. They didn't rush, but neither did they linger as they had. Each dipped once more beneath the surface, quick, breath-held immersions, before stepping back toward the bank. Water ran down their bodies, catching the now rising sun, turning to warmth almost as quickly as it had chilled. They dressed again without haste, though their movements were quieter now, more inward. Behind them, the stream continued its slow course, carrying away what had been given to it. Ahead, the day was rising, and with it, everything that had been set in motion.